Hey guys, what's going on? In today's video I'm going to show you guys how to do position and scale transitions just like this. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Alright guys, so I'm going to get right into how to do the scales and positions. So for these clips I'm probably going to do scale here, and then for this I'm going to do a scale for the beginning, a position to here, and then a scale out to this clip, and probably just a scale in on this part right here on this marker where it shoots in. So yeah, that's basically how I'm gonna do it. So I'll get right into it. On the first clip of all my videos, I like to do a scale out because they're the easiest to do and they look the best. So you can have it go from 200. That's how I always do it. So first keyframe, 200 on the scale, and then I always do it out to about 102. You always want to do 102 if you're gonna have a background shake, but you don't really have to always do 102. I like to do it just in case I have anything on the clip, any type of shake, so that you don't see this much motion tile. But as I just said that, make sure you have motion tile on your clips, so I'm going to add that to all my clips right now. I'm not going to add any shakes onto this since it's a scale tutorial and I want to make sure that you can see the scales, but you're always going to want to have the motion tile on the clip regardless, so always do that. And then I always use this graph right here or this graph. This graph is more for like the glitchy style if you wanted to shoot out of it really fast. So I can show you what this looks like. It just looks like that, super fast. This one is like a little bit more of a relaxed shake. This will definitely fit this style more, so I'm gonna go with that. And then now because I did a scale out here, I think it's gonna make more sense to do some kind of scale in. You can always do a scale out, a double scale out. Actually, I can show you right now how to do that. So if you're going to do a double scale out, you want to start it at 250 and you want the end frame to be about 125. You could even go 115. Yeah, I mean, it depends on how much impact you want. For me, I'm just going to do 125 because that's usually what I do. So you put the clip from 250 in the beginning, or the keyframe from 250 in the beginning to 125 at the end. And yes, it's going to be zoomed in a little bit, but it's going to be really good to do it this way because you don't want to see motion tile. It's very ugly and it makes your video look a lot less professional. And this is the way I do it, so you're going to scale out just like you did. And the reason why I made this 250 is to make up for the fact that this one is a higher number because you still want to get that same amount of zoom out. And then at the end, you're going to add a null object, and you can always make the null between 3 to about 6 keyframes long. For this, I'm going to make it 4 because 4 is usually great for this style. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and cut it there. And you can always change it later. And then you're going to line this up with the end because this will be an end transition. So you're going to parent this by taking this little circle thing, dragging it over to the null, and now it's parented. So you're going to add a scale onto this by clicking scale on it, keyframing at 100, going 1 frame before the end. That is very important for transitions on the end because actually I can show you guys an example for why. So you're basically just going to drag it out until this blue box, or whatever color box it is for you, lines up with the screen so that you don't see any motion tile. Now I'm going to use a graph that looks like this, but I think for this style this graph is going to look better. 95% of the time I'm using this graph, but for this I'm going to use this graph because I know this is literally the graph I used for my last silent voice edit, so I'm going to use it now. So this is what I'm going to first show you guys the wrong way and what it's going to look like the wrong way. So that's what the scale out looks like. Okay, this is what it looks like the right way. You can see it has way more impact on it because the reason why is if this frame is at the end, you're not seeing what is actually the actual value that is here, because all the keyframes actual values are not where you're at, it's actually in front of it. So if there was a keyframe here, you're actually looking at the value here. So that's why you don't want to line this up with the end, otherwise you won't see the value. As you can already see, it's zoomed in more, and when you have it here, it's actually zoomed out to the full amount that you put it to. So that's how you're going to do it there. So this is just a simple zoom out again. Actually, you know what? I'm just going to keep it that way since I already did it. And now for this clip, because you scaled out here, you're going to need to scale out here. A lot of people have that misconception that if I just scale it out here, I need to scale in, and that's actually incorrect. If you scale in, it's actually going to look bad because it's going to look like it bounces, and that's not what you're going. Well, you could be going for that, but in most cases it doesn't look very good. So, and of course the reason why you're making this 200 is because you want it to scale out with the clip that's scaling out here. So if this is scaling out, you need to make this scale out, and then in order to do that, you must make it pre-scaled in, just like that. And that already looks really nice, and you can see that there is no stiffness because we're using, right here, we're using overlapping keyframes. That is why my scales never look stiff, because a lot of people will stop their keyframe here, that's on here, and then add this zoom out down here on the original clip. But if you're using overlapping scales, it's not going to be stiff because the scales are overlapping each other. So that's why it looks like that. And then for this clip, I'm just going to have it scale in just so that I can show you guys all the methods for how I do my scales. I probably wouldn't do a scale in here specifically, but I'm just, for the purpose of the video, I'm going to show you guys the scale in. So for my scale ins, for this style, I'm going to do 150. Other styles, you can always do it between 150 to 200 for the scale in. Doesn't really matter. The scale out is the only time that it's specific, when you need it to line up with the borders in order to not show motion tile. But because you're zooming in, it doesn't matter. And then for this, I'm going to use this graph instead. Oh, oops. Use this graph instead, and then see what it looks like. Yep, that looks really nice. And sometimes it is hard to tell if the scale is going to look good without having the next transition on it. So because this is a scale in, we're going to have this clip scale in. Now it's really smart for me to have a scale in on this clip because I know that I'm going to want to position slide it to this side, okay? That's why I'm doing this. If the transition is not already a scale in, you're going to want to pre-scale in this clip so that you have enough to slide with, because you don't want to see any motion tile. Now, because this clip scales in, of course this clip is going to have to scale in as well. So keyframe it at 100 at the beginning, and I always go between 125 and 135. For this clip, I'm going to do 135 just because I want to have an extra room to do the position slide. So, just like this, add my graph. This scale graph is so universal. I literally used it for the Twixtor tutorial, which is literally on these clips right now. So if you didn't see that, you can go check it out. It's on my channel already. But yeah, so that's what it looks like. And that already looks super clean. It scales in really nice. And because there's so much extra value, that's what's making it look so smooth. The less value you have, the less smooth it's going to be because there's less impact in the beginning. You always have to remember that. That's why for the scale outs, I always do it to 200 because you can have so much extra impact. For this clip, I mean, for scale ins, it's going to be a little bit more difficult because the more you scale it in, the lower the quality is going to be. But as long as your clips are pretty high quality and you're not scaling it in on a weird spot that's going to block out spots that you want to see, scale ins are completely fine. But never go over 150 ever. It doesn't, like, it's just not going to look good. The clip quality is going to be dramatically reduced and it's just not going to look good. So, because you never really need to go over 150. 150 is like very specific situations. So I have the scale in, and now I'm going to do a position slide. So for my position slide, I do not need to use a null because this is a completely different transition. But sometimes you may want to put it on a null if you have like maybe text that you want it to go with the screen, because then you can parent the text to the null and they'll slide together. But for this instance, we don't, so we're just going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 clips back for a position, and then I go 1 before the end. And then what you're going to do is you can see the outline of your clip, and you're just going to hold control so that it's more defined once you get to the edges. So you scroll over until this matches with the side, and then hold control to get really close, and it'll go by smaller numbers. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you don't want it to go over or you'll see the motion tile, and that's what we're aiming to not do. So once you've done that, use the keyframes and add this scale, or this graph, which is literally the same graph for the out scales. So just like that, and it already looks nice, and we don't even have a position on this clip. So for this clip, we're going to add 135 just like the other clip so that it makes sense, since, you know, it's like literally the same clip but like flipped. Just keyframe at the middle of the clip, drag it to the end, and then drag this to the left, because of course when you're doing the positions, if this clip is sliding from left to right, you need to make sure that this clip is sliding from right to left, or starts from the right and then goes to the left. So it's kind of easy to tell in this clip, or some other times it might not be as easy to tell, but that's how you know. If it's going from left to right, this one has to start from the right and go to the left, and then vice versa the other way. So we're going to add the graph onto it, and then this is what it's going to look like. Looks super clean. And because we have the keyframes lasting all over the entire clip, it makes sure that it ensures that the clip is not stiff. Now, because we know that this clip is already scaled in and that this meets back in the middle, we can do a scale out transition. But sometimes you may not want to do a scale out transition. Say you're going to do some other sort of transition like a time slice or something else, and you want it to have extra slide. Now for this clip it wouldn't make sense because you would shift less of this on the screen, but there is this whole entire right piece of the clip that's not being used. So if you wanted to do it this way, you could have it slide extra, but just know that if you have a slide extra like this and you do a scale out, you're going to see motion tile. So for me, I'm just going to keep it the way I had it, just like this, and then for here I'm going to add another scale out. So 1, 2, 3, 4, parent this, go to the beginning, scale, and go here and scale out as much as I can. And for this I can scale out more because it zoomed into 135. And then I'm going to do the same scale graph that I did before. Now I want to make something clear. If you parent the clip to the null first and you add the values, it will actually update correctly to the clip. But if you do the values to the null and then parent it, they will not always update correctly to the clip, and then we'll have some problems. And that also goes for if you delete the null while it's parented to the clip, it can mess up the scales that are going on down here. It can mess up the values. So right here, you can see position slide and then scale out. So then of course for this clip, we're going to have a scale out. So we're going to go from 200 to 102. It's the value I always use. And for this, we're going to have well, I always call this a pop scale. So we're just going to have a scale that's like on the exact same clip. So you're going to parent this, but first, before we do that, I'm going to have the keyframes go to about here. The reason I'm doing this is because there's going to be there's going to be too much overlapping if we put it all the way at the end sometimes. So I always put it in the middle of the null, since I know that there's going to be a scale here. So you won't see the stiffness because they're already overlapping so much. So I'm going to have it scale out like this, and then once it hits here, we parent this to the null, and then I'm just going to have it scale in. So I can have it scale in to about 135. Will look pretty nice. And then same thing with the scale, and then this is what it looks like in the end. And sometimes this scale doesn't look good. Like I would say for this, doesn't really look the best. So you can use a scale that's more light on the impact so that you have more of the scale lasting throughout the clip. Alright guys, so thank you for watching this video. If you want to see any more tutorials on things that I've done in the past, make sure to comment down below. Also make sure to like and subscribe like always, and yep, peace out.